Hi, everybody. Today we're meeting with Sheena Hold. She's a managing editor at Dating Advice. Sheena's writing appeared in numerous literary and culture publications. As a managing editor at Dating Advice, she has interviewed hundreds on hundreds of dating professionals and relationship experts. Now she's here with us. It's great to have you, Sheena. Sheena also enjoys writing long-form fiction in her spare time, and she graduated with a degree in creative writing from Emory University. Sheena, let's get started with your personal story and the story of your success, your early years. Just share with us, how did you achieve what you achieved today, and potentially our viewers will get inspired and decide to walk your path.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, I'm Sheena. I graduated a few years ago from Emory, which is a university in Atlanta in the United States. I went there to study creative writing because I've always known that I wanted to be a writer. Writing is something that's very important to me. And throughout college and the past couple of years since then, I've done a lot of work in writing, both creatively and in a more professional corporate setting. So I've written for, um, you know, uh, finance experts. I've written for different advertising agencies. I ended up getting a job working with datingadvice.com, starting out as a staff writer, where I would write articles about the dating industry and relationships. I had a little bit of a background doing that, writing based on my own relationships and just kind of expertise through a publication called Lithium magazine. So I had a little bit of a background in that going to dating advice. And I've really learned so much about the dating industry and about relationships in general through my work there. And then in the past, I guess, 8 months now, I've been working as an editor for dating advice. So I've really been on the, I guess, interviewing and editorial end, kind of guiding the direction of the website and our different articles that are going through publication. So I've really gotten to see both sides of the writing process at datingadvice.com and then in my work before that.
Amazing. The professional story, indeed inspiring. About books, you're a writer, obviously, creative writing degree, Emory University. It's a famous one too, I gotta say. Tell us about your professional writing in terms of novels, books, maybe some publications, maybe poems that you have written and really proud of.
Yeah, so I actually finished my first novel earlier this year. It's called Arkind. It's a young adult fiction novel. It's about a group of girls at a Catholic high school in California who are trying to start a feminism club and kind of running into, general coming of age in issues and hijinks along the way. So I'm working through the editing process of that yet. Haven't quite moved into the publication phase there. But that's kind of the big project I've been working on in the past 2 years or so. Aside from that, I've written a decent amount of short fiction and nonfiction. And I've been published in a couple of smaller literary magazines with that. So Collision Literary Magazine, Rubber Top Review, The Underground, which are some smaller literary fiction publishers, but have kind of started getting my work out there a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of exciting on the
And what
side.
does it take to like, how does it all start? Does it start from an idea? You wake up in the morning and an idea just in your head, the bulb just lighting it up, like, hey, this is a cool idea. Let me write this. Let me write this. Or in the middle of the night, you wake up, you pull up the phone or a notepad, and you start writing the ideas, and you said, this is going to be huge. How does it work?
I had a very similar question, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, kind of a mix. So I think for most writers, I would say that usually you start writing because you have an idea that you're excited about and really passionate about sharing, maybe an experience that you think is particularly unique to you or that you can uniquely articulate. So, when I was a teenager, I think a lot of other writers kind of have this experience. I would feel very emotional about something or have some experience that was unique to me. And that's kind of where a lot of writing starts, I think, is kind of having that spur of the moment, I have to get this idea out kind of thought. But I think as you get more serious about writing as a craft, it becomes important to kind of artificially might be the wrong word, but kind of force yourself to kind of generate new ideas so that you're consistently writing. Because I think that a lot of people try to just kind of wait for something, you know, to spontaneously come to them. But if you want to kind of take your craft seriously and continue to excel, you have to kind of teach yourself how to generate ideas spontaneously. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be great. But I think that it's important, you know, especially if you're writing long form fiction like a novel, you can't just write when you have a spark of brilliance. You have to kind of force yourself every day to sit down and try to come up with new ideas. And some of them might not be great, and you can cut that later on. But I think it's a combination of, you know, occasionally you'll have a spark of, I have this idea that I really need to get out there. But I think more often than not, you kind of have to sit and brainstorm and come up with ideas, even if you're not super confident that they're going to be great in the end.
I mean,
Wow.
we're gonna kind of get off the topic a little bit. You know, like we're interviewing for matchmakers, dating industry. It's exciting, but I just can't help myself to get, you know, off the topic a little bit. So that's your first novel, like
Yes.
as a major novel. You said that you're working on it for a couple of years already.
Yes, I happen.
So you know, it's congratulations, for example. I mean, for example, first, I want to say, not for example, first, congratulations. Second of all, that's a kind of a significant segment of someone's life. So
Yeah.
what is it that really moved you to start writing specifically this novel? I'm pretty sure there's some more than just, you know, it has to be something personal. I have a feeling, but I'll let you talk about it, because you mentioned already about, you know, young women, you know, coming of age. But I'd like to know, like, what would move someone to spend years of life writing something like, you know, something down like that, something profound like that, you know?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it's largely inspired by some experiences I had as a teenager. The actual content of the story, of course, is it's fiction. You know, I've created all the characters and the specific plot. But I grew up in California. I went to Catholic school for all my life. I grew up Catholic. But I was also really interested in social activism. And I saw a lot of um, kind of injustice, even in my own fairly privileged community. Um, and it was really frustrating and upsetting to me and some of my friends as a teenager. And so we started a feminism club, and it ended up being kind of a controversial thing at the school. We ended up kind of not having a huge back and forth, but having a little bit of a disagreement with the school administration. And that was a kind of fundamental part of my teen years, and just kind of dealing with trying to get something passed, you know, through school, but also kind of dealing with why is this thing that feels very important to me and very essential to me so controversial and, you know, such a big issue for so many people. And so I started writing the book in part because I wanted to kind of talk about that. And I think it's, you know, tackles some important issues that are happening around the world right now, but also that affect young girls in a particular way. And I also think it's fun to just kind of talk about that phase of life. I think teenagers are really interesting to write about and read about, because I think that you know, you're in such an emotionally fresh part of your life. There are actually a couple of like small romantic plot lines too in the book that were fun for me to write, because I think that when you're 16 or 17, that's such a earnest age. And so I think that, you know, there's a lot of stories of people who are feeling very deeply and kind of trying to figure it out for themselves for the first time in their lives. And so it made me really excited to write, especially when I started. As the book went on, writing a novel, as I kind of mentioned, it's tricky to kind of have the idea for the entire thing when you start because there's so much content there. And so there were definitely points later on where I was like, what was I kind of thinking here initially, and how do I kind of work through that? And so there were definitely points where I was like, I had different projects that I was working on that I was at certain points maybe more interested in or wanted to start, but I kind of forced myself to sit and make sure I saw the whole thing through. Because I want to be a writer and I want to continue to do this. And I think it's really hard to finish a book, especially your first book. And so it was important to me that I, saw all 300 pages or whatever through, even when it was difficult, because I kind of needed to prove to myself too that that was something that I could do and that I'll continue to be able to do in my career.
300
what are
pages
the
plus.
That's a lot of writing, man, but it's more like it's also a lot of
It's a piece
search.
of your soul. It's your legacy, what you leave to the world. Yeah.
What are some of the, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of lessons, but what are some of the main, I guess, lessons or I mean, maybe experiences as well, lessons, experiences that you take away from this process?
For me as a writer, or like that the book says.
I would
I
say
mean,
for
I
the
would say,
both. That would be
how does the
interesting.
process of writing affect you as a person? Let's be a little specific. The answers that you get depends on the questions you ask. So let's be specific. You as a person, as a young professional, career wise, life wise,
Yeah. So I think kind of to my earlier point, one of the main ones is just the value of sticking with something, and how important it is to, obviously some projects you're going to start and realize that they're not working or you want to do something else, and that's fine. But I do think that it's really important to, if something matters to you, to stick with that, even if it gets tricky or you kind of like at certain points lose sight of why you originally wanted to do that thing, or like what your original idea was. Forcing yourself to be disciplined with that, I think, is really important. Kind of in that same vein, something writers will talk about a lot and was kind of tricky for me to figure out, and I'm still going back and forth with, is it's important to me, especially when I'm working on a project like this, to write every day. But kind of figuring out what that looks like and where writing fits into my day, was something that was kind of difficult because I have a full-time job. And so figuring out, how to navigate that. What I kind of settled on, and this was especially important while I was trying to finish up the novel, was to take 30 minutes every day. I time myself, and I work on the book, even if, it doesn't really matter if I write 300 words or if I write 800 words or I write 50 words. Um, just having that time set aside that I know I'm going to be focusing on that, is really important. And 30 minutes, it could go longer if I get an idea, but 30 minutes isn't a huge part of your day. That's not very long. But the difference between working on something every day for 30 minutes and not doing that at all, or, you know, working on it for an hour once a week, that's a pretty big difference. So that was big. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I think the importance of sticking with things is kind of the main one. I actually, around the same time that I was finishing this up, I also ran my first marathon, which was exciting. And so I just started training for a second now. But it was kind of cool to be doing those at the same time, because I think I kind of got the same lesson out of both goals. And, I mean, it's incredibly satisfying to finish something like that. But just, with a marathon or with writing a book, you can't just, the last day, just push yourself really hard for one day. You have to be consistent and um, push yourself, for a few years or for a few months. And so those were both really important lessons for me to learn as a person and in my career.
Now let's shift to your career. Let's zoom into dating
That's
advice.
it's a good shift, right? It's an organic shift.
Extremely organic. Whoa, full-time job.
From discipline, you know, sticking with the goal. Yeah, it just so organically moves to the job.
Indeed. So how has your story begun with the dating advice? Why dating advice, first of all? I'm positive you had thousands. You had a full buffet of options to apply and to work with, but why dating advice and how did it start? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of factors here. So one, it was important for me, kind of at the start of my career. I really wanted to work at a company that was based locally. And so Digital Brands, which is our parent company, is based in Gainesville, Florida, where I live right now, it's a small city, it's not huge. And so I really wanted to work with a company based here. Digital Brands owns a couple of different websites. I work on datingadvice.com and datingnews.com as well. And we also own 2 finance websites and 1 tech website. I've done some writing on finance as well before, so I do have some experience there. And I find it personally interesting. But I think dating and lifestyle generally, because dating is usually, from like an editorial perspective, it's usually housed under lifestyle. Um, it's really fun. And so I really enjoy, writing about it. I think that dating and relationships are, deeply important to everyone. I think it's funny because I find, I'm in my early 20s, and a lot of my friends, young professionals, people kind of at the start of their life. And there's this sort of emphasis at this point in your life, and really, I think through a lot of life, on focusing on your career above everything else and your like material well-being. And I think that's really important. Obviously, I am focused on that as well. But I think that our relationships, whether that's dating or family or friends or whoever's important to you, that's really what makes people happy, and that's what makes for, a good life. Um, I moved to Gainesville, Florida originally because my partner is here. And so I made that move based on that relationship. And that was a great decision for me. And I'm, very happy with that. And so I think that if I can do things in my writing and in my work to help other people find love and find contentment, um, that's a really great thing. And as I said, it's fun to write about. It's fun to learn more about. So yeah, I've just really enjoyed it.
And it's nice because you're doing it in your novel, right? You're searching, you're having fun there as well, but you're also trying to get to the, to the bottom of it, right? To understand what's moving teenagers, yeah, in their age. They're naive, but they're also very full of energy, full of hopes and love and
Life.
emotion.
Yeah.
So and then now you're writing about not so distant, it's about relationships again, it's about dating. It's interesting that it's very connected, it's very connected. And tell us about your readers. Who are your readers mainly? Obviously, when you write articles, you write it with probably the writing exercise. You have to imagine the reader, who it is, the gender, the age, any kind of other specifics. Like, can you tell us about who your readers are? And then obviously, like, what are some of the most interesting or exciting articles you have written for them so far? That maybe our matchmakers or our viewers, generally speaking, would be happy to go and check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of readership, we have a pretty international readership. I think we've had like 66, 67 lifetime or 67 million, sorry, lifetime readers on the website, which is pretty cool, pretty high reach. It skews a bit younger, but I'd say that we have readers of every age group. Most readers find us they'll be searching for something they're looking for online, whether that's matchmaker near me, or advice for dating therapy, things like that. And they'll come across our articles. So a lot of our our readers are really just kind of solving, here's this issue that I have, or this thing that I want to work on or find. And they'll
Very
come to us.
specific. It's never too general. It's never too general. It's very specific. The
Yes.
top.
Yeah, a lot of people find us like through keyword searches and things like that. So yeah, we have a lot of articles that kind of tackle people's specific issues or questions within dating. And then I would also say something kind of nice about the way that our website is structured is we have 6 different categories for the type of person that you are and the type of dating that you're doing. So we have a men's dating category, a women's dating category, gay dating, lesbian dating, senior dating, and then just general online dating. Which is kind of nice because that means that usually when we're writing an article or working on something, the writer can be kind of focused on, a specific one of those demographics. But it also makes it easier if you are, a woman who's looking for dating advice that's specific to you, or you're a senior who's dating, you can find helpful information, and learn a little bit more about that on our site specifically. So that is pretty cool. And then in terms of favorite articles that I've worked on, it's hard to say generally. We've been trying lately to kind of get a little bit more, I interview a lot of therapists and dating experts. I've been trying to get a little bit more specific in terms of the focuses of our conversations. So most recently, we did a piece with Modern Intimacy, which is a sex and relationship therapy service. They operate in a couple of different states in the US, but they're kind of at the forefront of like intimacy coaching and things like that. And so I was speaking with one of their doctors, Kat Arnella, I believe, and I was asking her because some of her expertise is in ethical non-monogamy, which is kind of a hot topic right now. A lot of people are kind of interested in that or experimenting with that a little bit. So we just kind of had a conversation where I was just asking her questions about that because that's not something that I have a ton of like knowledge about. And I don't think that many people on our team do. So it was kind of interesting to, be able to talk with an expert on that, and just kind of learn more advice. So yeah, that was a really cool one.
Actually, this is some of the most exciting part of your work, right? It's just learning directly from someone completely new.
Well, and one of the fun things about that too is I can really just, if I have questions about something, occasionally I'll talk to a therapist or something. And if there's, or actually a good example of this is, we speak to a lot of people in the wedding industry. And I'm not married, but one day I would like to get married. And so I can ask, if I'm talking to a wedding planner, what are your top tips for, people to make sure they don't make this mistake, like when they're planning their wedding? And I can learn that. And now I have that breadth of knowledge too. So, when that comes eventually, then I know what to look out for, right? So there's different things like that where I'm like, if I have a question, I'm sure our readers have that too. So
Yeah,
it's cool.
and when you're doing these interviews, you obviously have some kind of agenda, but you can also always improvise, like we're improvising today, right? I mean, just here today, there's like at least 5, 6 off topics we can easily go. Like I would love to
Oh, they're
just
pretty
literally,
fascinating, I gotta say.
yeah, just this one, for example, this article you wrote. I mean, recently, that's a whole interesting topic. I would love to dive into, but I'll make myself what have I learned today? Be disciplined. Let's stay with the main topic. What are other types of articles that kind of stuck with you, that you had maybe more fun than others, or something that you discovered that was completely surprise for you, something that you were like unexpected? Maybe if you have something, if not, it's okay, we can continue moving on, but if there's something boom, like to share with our
Yeah.
readers.
So one of the fun ones that I wrote, I have a little bit more of an academic background. being not that far out of school, and I'm just kind of generally interested in stuff that has a little bit more statistics to back it up. So I think last year, Tinder always puts out what they call urine swipes. So they do kind of report on their users and kind of user behavior that they've seen over the past year. And I remember last year they were kind of focused on Gen Z and different behaviors that we're seeing right now that are a little bit different from years past, or just like millennials in general. And a really interesting topic for me. And I was writing kind of a review of the Earn Swipe, and talking about some of the trends that Tinder saw, kind of pushing back against some of the things that I think need to be examined a little bit more deeply. But something that Tinder was talking about that I'm really interested in, is the rise of the so-called situationship, or which I think is kind of an extension of hookup culture. But a situationship is the idea that there's this kind of increase right now in undefined relationships where people will be dating someone or seeing someone pretty seriously, but not really calling it that. They may or may not be seeing other people, but it's kind of like these relationships that are a little bit more serious than just like hooking up with people casually, but not quite as serious as a committed relationship. And Tinder was kind of talking about this as if this was a, positive, or at least like neutral, interesting trend that we're seeing as a generation. And I kind of wrote a section of that article sort of pushing back against that, because I think that there's a little bit of a, trend towards not really asking for commitment, that A, is generally negative for women, but B, might be kind of negative for everyone. And so that was kind of a fun article to write, because a lot of times, I'm interviewing people directly. I don't want to, I'm trying to get the best possible perspective of their work and kind of highlight that. But it's fun when we're reviewing something like Tinder, or just stats in general, and kind of trying to talk about what that means and parse it out. Because that was kind of a fun one to push back against a little bit.
Is it something that was completely new for you? Like this, I never even heard the concept of situationship.
I was familiar with it. Yeah, I think part of it is that is definitely a thing with young people right now. I certainly have a lot of girlfriends who have been victim to a situationship.
I wonder
But
what our matchmakers are going to say about this topic. That's a whole big topic. Maybe we'll do
my
a
guess,
follow-up interview.
I think the matchmakers who I've spoken to about similar topics tend to agree with me on this. They tend to be pretty anti hookup culture in general. So yeah, I we're usually in agreement there. But yeah, anyway, so that was kind of fun.
I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, it's completely for me, it's a surprising term even. Like, so I'm pretty sure it's interesting for our viewers, or for your viewers for your readers to even read about this kind of a trend. Did you get a lot of comments on your blog or on your website?
Sure about that one. I do know that we got quoted in a couple of places for that one. But I can't really remember what the specific comments were because it was last year.
You
But
guys, you keep the comments on, or you turn them off on your website generally?
we keep them on, I'm pretty sure. To be honest with you, I seldom look. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're on.
Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's not my problem what people say.
To keep you sane, you
Exactly.
sane. There's all kinds of comments. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. Okay. How we're doing on time? Oh yeah, we're doing okay.
I have a question. It's gonna be about arts. It's gonna be about contemporary writing, and for young writers, you never know. Well, actually, matchmakers are writers too. Every website owner has to be a writer. Yes, many use marketing teams and SEO teams, but only a matchmaker can write perfect blog or perfect description of his or her services. give us a little bit of advice on how to be a good writer, maybe a few strategies, tips, what does it take to write a quality piece?
So I think one of the main things that distinguishes somebody who writes professionally, or is just a high quality writer from someone who isn't necessarily, um, and this is hard to kind of nail down, but just the conversational flow of writing. So I think with a professional writer, if you read their writing, you never really stop and think like that was kind of awkwardly framed, or that was no one really speaks like that. I think a good way that's always tricky because it's that's a hard thing to learn. But I think if that's something that you find is a weak point of your writing, a good tool is reading your writing out loud, and then kind of seeing where was this awkward to say, where did I, kind of stumble over my words a little bit. And I think that helps a lot with having higher quality writing. Another mistake that I see a lot of people make is trying to use big words when there's a much simpler word that conveys the same message. So for basically any writing, if there is a simpler word that means the same thing, you should use the simpler word, kind of as a rule of thumb. But that's especially true if you're writing copy on your website or you're writing something that people who are not professionals are going to be reading, because I wrote finance blog posts a year or two ago, and my boss had me write at a fourth grade level, so that people would stick with it and write
Forget
back.
it.
That was hard. That was hard to do because I was explaining financial concepts at, a level a 9-year-old could understand. I don't think it necessarily needs to be that simple, but honestly, a 6th or 7th grade reading level is probably where you want your writing to sit for most non-professional audiences. So I would recommend that. And then another thing too that's it's kind of simple but does make a big difference is just trying to break up your sentences a little bit more. I certainly have a problem with this too because I think, when you're writing, you feel like it'll flow better if you just put a bunch of commas in and never end a sentence. But that becomes really convoluted really quickly. So that, and then I guess probably my last tip, sorry, these are not very well
Oh,
planned out,
they're
but
perfect, brilliant, really
It's not planned. This is all improvisation, mostly
natural and real.
off the
thank
topic.
you. Well, what I'm about to say kind of goes against what we're saying. Plan. I do think that, yeah, I do think that that makes a big difference. Just writing an outline. I think a lot of people are kind of averse to writing one because you think like I'll know what I'm thinking as I go. Um, and you can kind of go off script a little bit, but I do think planning out your thoughts before you start writing is a good way to kind of make sure that you're hitting all the main points that you want to hit. And the structure of whatever you're writing makes sense. That becomes more important depending on the length of what you're working on. But I do think that that can be a really useful tool, especially for people who aren't used to writing all the time.
I have one
I
last
have a
question. It's gonna be
You have
brilliant.
one last
Everybody wants to hear the answer to this question. Chat GPT, and you're a professional writer. Do you feel threatened by Chat GPT, and why?
Okay. A little bit is my answer. So a little bit, I am cautiously optimistic about ChatGPT. I think that AI is absolutely here to stay. I think there's no point in avoiding it. I think that the people who are going to hang on are the people who understand how to use AI for their benefit, and also understand its limitations. So what I mean by that is a lot of companies, and I was following this very closely because my work is very, tied to that. When ChatGPT, I guess model or 3.5 first came out, a lot of companies were very rapidly firing their content teams, or their marketing experts. I think that was a huge mistake because I think that we're seeing now people can tell the difference between stuff that was created by AI and stuff that was created by humans. And even if they can't, usually stuff that was created by AI, it doesn't have the same level of, well, it's not as interesting. Yeah. That might change at some point, but I think for now, people definitely still prefer content that was created by humans. However,
I don't know how
AI
that's gonna change. You can apply AI, depends where, but how AI can tell a story, a unique story that a human can tell that will be engaging for us as other humans. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if I'm interested in a story a machine is telling me. Do you know what I mean? No, but don't get me wrong. I know there is a use case for AI. I get it. You know, for business, for many other productivity reasons, blah, blah, blah. We use it for policy writing, for example, for compliance a little bit here, just to help us structure the formats. But I would like to hear story from other humans, you know, written by other humans, if you ask me.
With those imperfections, that's what makes a story, imperfections. Too sterile isn't that satisfactory. I don't know.
And also, I think a lot of AI content is pulling from writing that already exists. And we're already seeing that there's some ethical debates too about how to cite that. So I do think that when AI gets too creative, there's the question of how much is being, kind of just amalgamated from different places on the internet. I guess the one thing kind of on a positive note that I will say about AI is for certain types of writing, Tim, you kind of mentioned this with productivity tools. There is so much research that goes into writing quality pieces, especially in tech or finance or different spaces. I do think that AI is a great tool for conducting research. And so I think writers need to kind of, I guess, adopt it to an extent, but actually content that's fully written by AI is, I don't think, the way to go.
Yeah,
God
me too.
bless. We have
We
only
have
a few seconds left. Sheena, it was absolute pleasure having you here. God bless sincerely. Our viewers for sure will benefit from this, and potential writers, matchmakers. Tim, you have any last words?
Well, I was gonna ask if you consider yourself introvert or extrovert. Do we have do we have time for this last answer?
I'd say I'm